Welcome to the Explainer. Look, if you've been following the global AI race at all lately, you know the drill. Raw computing power and incredibly deep pockets are basically everything. But today, we're unpacking a project called Open EuroLLM to see how Europe is attempting to build world-class AI under some completely unique financial and regulatory constraints. Here is exactly how we're going to break this all down today, moving from Europe's big structural bets right through to the ultimate reality check coming in 2026. Let's dive right in. Right out of the gate, we are hit with this fascinating, slightly hidden empirical reality. Despite millions in funding, the project's own coordinator, Jan Hodžić, flat out admits that securing computing power is still the bottleneck. Think about that. This pan-European consortium was explicitly designed to pool resources, and yet they're fighting the exact same shortage as everyone else. Okay, part one. Europe's sovereign AI bets and the three distinct paths to digital sovereignty.
The thing you have to understand is that Europe's strategy isn't just one single unified bet. It's an entire ecosystem of different approaches. Italy is funding a build-from-scratch national model, which they're calling Minerva. Portugal is backing the continuation of an existing model with Amalia. And the EU as a whole? They are betting on Open EuroLLM, which is this sprawling continent-wide consortium. These aren't really competing models so much as they are three parallel experiments to figure out which institutional model actually yields digital sovereignty.
Moving right along to part two, let's actually look under the hood of that consortium engine. The scale here is absolutely wild. This is a massive engine designed to pool talent across the entire continent. We're talking 20 different organizations, pulling together 12 universities, 6 companies, and 3 high-performance computing centers. Coordinated out of Prague and Finland, this giant brain trust is attempting something incredibly difficult. They want to master 35 different languages to overcome the limits of isolated, country-by-country efforts. So, what is fueling all this ambition? Well, a €37.4 million budget, mostly funded straight out of the EU's Digital Europe program. This makes Open EuroLLM a flagship project, receiving the EU's ultimate mark of excellence for strategic tech investments. And on paper, pooling the resources of an entire continent creates a pretty formidable war chest, right? But let's zoom out for a second, because that massive-sounding European war chest actually gets humbling real quick. That €37.4 million, it represents roughly 0.04% of just the first phase of the US Stargate AI infrastructure project. It is literally a tiny fraction of what American frontier developers are throwing at this. This vast asymmetry forces us to ask a tough question. How can Europe possibly compete at the bleeding edge with that kind of gap? Which brings us to part three, the compute reality check and the bottleneck at scale. To their credit, the consortium has successfully secured over 4.5 million GPU hours on some of Europe's top supercomputers, like Leonardo in Italy and Lumi in Finland. Make no mistake, this is real scale. It's an incredible amount of raw processing power. But remember that quote from the beginning? The project lead is clearly signaling that it's still not enough to create a model that matches US tech giants. Having access is fantastic, but pure processing power remains the ultimate ceiling here. Part 4. Compliance versus frontier capability. This is where we see a major strategic pivot. Look at this timing. Open EuroLLM started exactly one day before the EU AI Act went into effect. That is entirely structural. It makes this project the ultimate operational test case for compliance-first development. Usually, US and Chinese developers build for maximum capability first and then kind of retrofit for rules later. Open EuroLLM is treating the EU AI Act not as a barrier, but as a catalyst, a literal blueprint to architect their model correctly from day one.
Because they frankly lack the computing power to hit position 1 and just muscle their way to matching US general capabilities, they have to pivot. They're basically redefining what victory looks like. If you can't beat an American tech giant in raw horsepower, you pivot to position 2, becoming the absolute gold standard for data privacy, total openness, and mastering the cultural nuances of 35 specific European languages. It's all about building an AI that actually understands local cultures, rather than relying entirely on a foreign tech giant.
All right, part 5. Let's talk about public infrastructure over agility and the real wins we're seeing in year 1.
Critics absolutely love to point out that a 20-organization consortium is going to move way slower than an agile, single commercial firm like Francis Mistral. And you know what? They're totally right. But single companies don't build the open, cross-cutting public infrastructure that a consortium does. The trade-off is pretty straightforward. You sacrifice breakneck commercial speed to produce foundational, open-source goods that the entire continent can freely use.
And they are delivering on that promise. They've already built phenomenal public infrastructure, like the Mixture Vitae open dataset and 38 monolingual reference models. These are essentially the raw foundational building blocks of AI. Even if Open EuroLLM's final chatbot isn't the absolute smartest in the world, these research-grade open-source tools are going to durably benefit every single future European AI startup. That right there, that is the true superpower of a consortium model.
Finally, Part 6, the July 2026 test, when the actual artifacts arrive.
Everything we've talked about is building toward a highly anticipated climax in the summer of 2026. Operational models from all 3 European bets, Minerva, Amalia, and Open EuroLLM, are going to be released right around the same time. Open EuroLLM drops its first models on July 31st. For the first time, all this theory and speculation about European sovereign AI is going to converge into hard, testable, empirical data.
Ultimately, these releases are going to definitively test the binding constraint of European AI. Because here is the hard truth. You simply cannot regulate your way out of a massive computing investment gap. You can pool all the talent you want, you can build the absolute best compliance frameworks in the world, but if that raw processing power isn't there, your capability ceiling remains fixed. So, as we wait for those 2026 results to roll in, I'm going to leave you with this pivotal question. Will Europe decide to lower its strategic ambitions to match its wallet? Or will it finally, dramatically, increase its investment to match those ambitions? The models dropping in 2026 are going to give us that answer. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, and I will see you on the next deep dive.